information we need in return for those amendments. So I've been working with the clerk's office and the speaker's office. They're on board. They've almost got it ready so that we can do that. And I'm hoping it will be before we actually get very many bills on the docket. But there's a legal reason why they haven't in the past, because an amendment is not part of a bill until it gets to a certain point in the committee system. So they don't want to give the appearance that that amendment has been adopted. So I've given them some suggestions on that, how to do that, and they're working with the IT people to get that set up properly on the website so that when you see it, you'll know it's a proposed amendment and not already adopted. So that's one thing I think will be very important for you, because as some of you may know, if you follow any of these things, sometimes an amendment literally rewrites the entire bill. Many of them do. So if you don't know what that amendment is, you're still looking at the original language saying, well, I don't have a problem with that. And you see the amendment, like, wait a minute, I've got a problem with that. So it's kind of a big deal that I want to try to help clear up a little bit and give you more access to state government. Another big issue going on right now, as many of you know, probably the hottest thing that I have heard of in a number of years, and that's the refugee resettlement. Our governor, I don't take anything away from him, because I think what he has done is he's made a decision based on his heart, on his Christian compassion. He has ministered to refugees for years overseas, and been in their camps, held their hand. So I think he's coming from that place instead of what the state government needs to do. The state of Tennessee has a lawsuit right now against the federal government for refugee resettlement under the 10th Amendment. We feel like it's a violation of the 10th Amendment for them to send federal refugees into our state for us to support with our money. It ought to be 100% federal money if it's a federal program. So that's the premise that we're going on. I will tell you there is a significant pushback against this in the legislature. We are formulating it right now. I'm involved in that personally, and we'll be very close to the tip of the spear, if not the tip on this one. I intend to maintain a good relationship with the governor through that. This is not personal. This is business. And he's made a personal decision, I think, for a business called the state of Tennessee. And we've got to push back on that, and we're about to. So be watching for that. There's not a lot of details just yet. That is coming. Some legislation that I'm working on this year that I may sponsor, looking at possibly sunsetting the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. They're up for sunset this year, and we're finding more and more complaints about them and the way they do business. I don't think they really have a role in the state anymore. They did at one time, but now I think their role has ended, so it's time to sunset them. We've got some local constituents here in Madison County that have a real tough time with them that we're trying to work with and trying to help them out, but it's kind of an uphill battle for these folks. Looking at also a thing that some of our veterans, two different veterans things that I'm working on. One is I'm trying to get some reimbursement set up for these veterans that have honor guard services. They actually form, we've got some here in Madison County that will go to a veteran's funeral in this state and perform the honor guard portion of the ceremony. They do it out of their pocket. The travel, meals, all of that is out of their pocket. And so I feel like we need to have some funding with Department of Veterans Affairs that will help reimburse them for those costs. Now, it's not a money-making thing, but just cover their costs. They're doing that for us. They're honoring those veterans on behalf of us, and I just think we ought to be able to help them cover the expenses. So,
did the license plate issue get straightened out?
The license plate issue is the other thing that I'm working on with Commissioner Deaton has brought it to my attention that veterans used to be able to buy or get 2 license plates for free. And now it's been reduced to 1 at some point in time. So we are working to get that back to where it is 2. So I'm working through all of that to figure out what all the moving parts are. One of the first questions I asked, and I think y'all might appreciate this, does this cost the county any money? Because I don't want us to be doing something that's going to cost county some money. So, and looking into that. That's definitely on our list right now. I've got some self-defense legislation that, matter of fact, I called my office while ago to see if the latest bill has been dropped on my desk. It is not yet, but I want to pass a permitless concealed carry law. You don't need a permit to carry concealed in this state.
Yes.
I firmly believe it's our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, and that right is not to be infringed. Pretty plain and simple to me. that's something I'm working on. It will actually, if we pass this, it will do away with this last permit that came out, the reduced cost permit that just came out and started January 1. We won't need that anymore. A couple others on that, in that realm of self-defense. Right now, you can be sued if you use your weapon in self-defense. Family of the victim or whatever, of the perpetrator, it could tie you up in court. So we're trying to limit that tremendously so that you're not fighting a potential criminal investigation, which is normal in those situations. You know, the DA and others always investigate those to make sure it's a legitimate self-defense situation. But you shouldn't be fighting that because at the same time you're fighting a civil suit. And we're also wanting to make it more difficult for people to file a civil suit when you haven't done anything wrong. And I know there are groups out there that will be looking for targets in conservative districts to make examples of it and to try to tie up in court and cost them a lot of money. So we're trying to prevent that. We've got a cleanup bill that we're working on with our legal department that is kind of a gotcha phrase in our law that I didn't know was there. The Supreme Court actually pointed out that we need to make this change. If you can use self-defense as long as you're not involved in unlawful activity. Those words, unlawful activity, doesn't define what that is. So you could be literally jaywalking, and if someone came to mug you and you use self-defense, you know, you used a weapon in self-defense, technically you might be prosecuted because you were jaywalking, you were involved in an unlawful activity. So we're trying to define that, make that more solid so that you and I have the protection by state law that we think you have. A few other things. I may co-sponsor, looking at one law that one of my representative colleagues has introduced. It's in order of the slowpoke law. It's basically an expansion of that. Right now, and this was a little bit of a surprise to me, many of you have seen people camp out in the left lane on the interstate. I think it causes a tremendous amount of problems. It slows all of the traffic down. It causes people, you know, a lot of cutting in and out. But on a 4-lane highway where you have 2 lanes going the same direction, the slowpoke law does not apply. It's only 3 lanes or more. So I love your input on this, but I think it would benefit us if we apply that to 2 lanes going the same direction or more. So just something to think about and you know, think about what your experiences have been and whether that would be something to be important to have. Another one I already touched on, the veteran license plate issue. I know there are other things that are probably on your minds. I want to open it up for you guys to tell me what your thoughts are, what concerns you have, things that I might not have even touched on today. I do want to say first that I really appreciate you sending me to Nashville. I'm thoroughly enjoying this job. It's a challenge. It's very intriguing. There's a lot of moving parts. It takes a lot of time, but I really enjoy it, and I feel like I'm doing some good, and I appreciate the comments. A lot of you compliment me and give me accolades occasionally of your appreciation, your thanks, and it means a lot to me. It really does. I'm very proud to support this county and to support my constituents in this role. Yes, sir.
Chris just wondered what the possibility is. Do you think the governor would rescind his position on refugees?
I don't think he will without legislative direction.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's something about that. I mean, actually, he's taken the total voice away from any local government in this aspect whatsoever.
The executive order that the president issued and the subsequent guidelines that the State Department issued for that give him the sole authority to speak for the state. Now, the wording in that, which I have gone over extensively, actually the State Department is supposed to look at the sentiment of the state, more or less, but the governor is the one that they peg to write the letter. So I think if they see the sentiment of the state by the legislature that's different from the governor, I think they have to take that in consideration. And of course, each county has a say-so as well, whether they're going to accept refugees. And I would encourage Madison County, all of our commissioners, to let's get a resolution passed to send them a letter that no, we will not accept refugees.
We will have a resolution passed.
So as it stands right now, though, we as a local community can't refuse to take those. I mean,
You can. I have heard the governor has said that his decision basically overrides the local, but that's not what the executive order says. It has to be from the governor and from the county.
And he also is accepting those that Australia rejected, is that?
To my knowledge, he just said we will accept refugees. Now, I don't know that there's anything specific about the ones from Australia. I've seen that Facebook and those comments, but I don't have anything to found that on, really face that on.
I mean, there's things on Facebook that's inaccurate.
Well, every once in a while, yeah. I know that's hard to say.
He commented to me last week when he was in town, as I asked him a point like this, and he said that the credentials and background history is supposed to be checked out and also find out more about the individuals so that there won't be any other Al-Qaeda or whatever trying to slip in on us. He's supposed to be, I was 18, it would only be a few hundred, and I said, is that 300 or 9? And he couldn't answer.
He won't know, we won't know till they show up. And I think there's some rose-colored glasses being looked at there. So, the truth of it is, as good as the vetting is, and it's probably as good as it's ever been, it's still terrible. There's no way you can vet people from that part of the
getting
world.
the, benefits, that are only should be applied to people who are put in, such as Social Security, state money, whatever. And he couldn't answer that.
The biggest pushback that we have, I believe, the most solid footing we have is the financial part of this. By accepting refugees, we're obligating this state for millions and millions of dollars in aid to these people. Nearly every one of them gets on government assistance, most of it's state assistance, and it's taxing our citizens unfairly. And
I think the speaker
without
of the
us
House is
also-
around 20,000 for it.
Sir,
I think the speaker of the House says it's costing roughly 20,000 per refugee.
per year.
Chris,
Yes.
but we also have the problem with chain migration. If we accept 900, next thing we know, we've got their brothers, their sisters, their cousins-in-laws, and everybody. So we're not talking 9,000, maybe 900. They're gonna bring everybody in.
We don't
And then we're
know.
gonna have the same situation here, that Minnesota's not with Omar, and you've got the lady in, Michigan. They will have a small community, and they can.
Now, one thing that the governor has stated that I think he's right about, if we say no, we're not gonna accept them, they certainly can still migrate in here. Once they land and they're in a city somewhere, they can move. And I don't think there's any tracking, but by the same token, when they are here, if we allow them to come here, there's no tracking them then either. And they can move around and come to, if they land in Nashville, they can easily move to Jackson. And we don't know, we just don't have a way to track that, to my knowledge, now, other than through the services. Well, they could, again, if they've got that refugee status, it is a legal status to be here. And so I think that's something else that we need to be pushing back against, is the ability for them to be on TennCare and SNAP and all these other programs.
On this, we've talked about the county commission resolution. I've had 2 phone calls to see if the Madison County Party would like to have a resolution pushing back on this. And the 2 questions, I'd like your thoughts on the party doing it, and I'd like your thoughts on, is this something we want to do as a party?
My thoughts, I mean, the more things like that we can have to show the true sentiment of the people, I think is the better.
How many people are opposed to this? Aye.
Refugee resettlement.
Aye.
The governor must think about his own reelection. If he splits the party, we're gonna have a Democratic governor.
I personally don't think, this is just my personal opinion of the governor, I think his reelection is subservient in his mind to doing what he thinks is the right thing. And he thinks the right thing is helping these persecuted Christians in other places that he can possibly help. Now, the executive order and all the guidance says you can't discriminate either. We have to take whatever they say. So you can't discriminate on race, religion, color, all of those things. So if we can't pick and choose, even though he might like to do that, we can't, by law.
What does he think about the people that are already here, that are working hard, and are gonna have to support them?
Right. Again,
We're
that's,
already supporting everybody.
that's the financial aspect of it that the legislature has to look at. The security of it, I personally have a major problem with it. As a representative, you know, I think our first and foremost concern is gonna be the financial aspect of it, because I think if you argue the security part of it, it's just an argument. I don't think you'll ever win that argument. But the financial part of it is definitely a winnable argument.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
to Larry's point a while ago, whether we should be involved in this as a party, if you take Article 1, Section 23 of the Tennessee Constitution, it is laid upon us to instruct our representatives. That's what we're charged with. And the governor is our representative as well. So therefore, we're simply doing what we're told under the Constitution if we let our voices be heard. It's not something outside the realm of what we're supposed to do. It is our obligation per the Constitution.
Absolutely.
Should we all be calling his office and flood his office with emails and calls?
And you know, right now it's resettlement deal. Plus, they do get the social security number and a social security card as soon as they put their feet on the ground here. And I think they just came up here, just came in nationwide outage preventing the Tennessee from issuing driver's license. A nationwide outage is preventing the state of Tennessee from issuing a driver's license. This has happened all across America right now, so we don't know any detail. Just came in.
Okay.
But that led me to ask.
Computer outage or something?
Computer. Don't know why, but.
That's odd.
But the next thing is, right, I agree. The next thing is on that line is when you go out here to the get your license at Tennessee Department of Safety here, some of these people are sitting out there for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours.
Jimmy, we can't hear you over here.
You talking about the Department of Safety where you go to get your driver's license? There's right now, you just came across the news that there's a nationwide outage in the system that issues driver's license. I didn't know we had a nationwide system, but man, there's something going on with that today. And then he's talking also, a follow-up was about how long it takes, how much wait time there is at some of these Department of Safety testing stations. And that's something I know the Department of Safety has already been working on, some setting up things with the county clerks so that you get your driver's license there. I don't know the mechanics of that, but they've been looking at other opportunities to speed that process up. And I will tell you,
They've been talking about doing this for a year. They haven't done a thing about it. Bureaucracy up there.
we're pushing on that for sure. And I will tell you, Trenton is usually a pretty easy place to get in and out of. That's where I go. So.
Or Norrisburg.
And Trenton's a little closer. Thank you for that.
You want to see that?
My wife has reminded me of something that I found out about refugees and the impact it has on us. Not only the welfare type programs, but in education. In Davidson County, in their school system, there are 120 languages they're having to deal with to teach these kids English. Can you imagine how many interpreters that is and what cost that is coming out of the education budget for that local LEA?
Businesses also, like, red chicken salad, you have to have raspberry burgers.
Right, that's a good point. In the healthcare industry, for sure.
And nothing forces them to learn English.
No. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to change gears here, but back to the social care, you know, recognize reciprocity in Tennessee, or you know, correctly, they might not recognize our social care permit.
It would not affect the basic, the enhanced permit that we have now, wouldn't affect that at all. I've got a lot of time, and I would keep that, just for that reason. So it shouldn't affect that at all. And this new one, that it would do away with, doesn't have any reciprocity right now. Probably
I'm
won't.
saying the other states would still recognize the Tennessee social care permit.
It shouldn't change that at all. Well, you still have to have the same requirements, go through the same process to get that enhanced permit, so it should not change that at all. But something we'll definitely ask about and watch it, make sure. We would not want it to affect that. Anything else on your minds? Besides food?
Chris, what's the latest update on the mega site?
Don't really have anything super late on the mega site right now, other than there are just a handful of easements left, and they're running those through court now. They're supposed to be filing those any day now. 6 or 8, something like that. They're down to folks that have refused to give them an easement, and they're going through eminent domain with that. And then I think very soon, they'll be ordering the pipe for that. They didn't want to get carbon board, unfortunately, but that's the next phase, to order the pipe, get a contractor and start putting it in the ground. So that's for that wastewater discharge system that's going to the Mississippi River, and, which is one of the most time-consuming parts of the infrastructure there. And that will already be out of the way. Money's already been appropriated that for the last couple of years at least, in setting their way for this to get through the legal process. Another thing I was reminded of, my wife was reminded when we were talking about earlier, in red light here, there's another law being looked at, another bill to permanently and once and for all eliminate no cameras from this state. I went there and signed on to that. I will tell you, they are nothing. They will not do anything to your driver's license, insurance, nothing. They have nothing except the blow. We're on the way, and I have confirmed that with law enforcement. So, and personally experienced it. Yes, sir.
I don't think you've told people the committees you serve on, what you've got. No one's been added since you got elected. So your emphasis will be known by everybody.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Vice Chair of Ag and Natural Resources, which is over TDEC and TWRA, and Department of Agriculture, and some other things. I'm on state government, full committee, and correction subcommittee. So, learning a lot about our correction system now in the last year, that things that I had no idea about. And then recently, this past fall, have been added to the Finance Committee and Appropriation Subcommittee. So pretty much anything that spends money is going to come through two different committees that I'm sitting on. We actually had committee meetings, budget hearings, back in November for a week and in December for a week. I had made some suggestions to our speaker back in the summer that we might somehow get a jump on the budget hearings, because they're time consuming, they happen in a very crunch time, and we don't really get to put the emphasis in those and the research into those that we need to. So the way the process works, the departments work on their budgets, they then present to the governor in the fall. The governor then, his staff put their spin on it and present it to us in February or March. So what we did is we just said, okay, when you present to the governor, you just come right over and present to us as well. We know it's preliminary, it's not the governor's budget, but it's the proposed department budget. And so it at least gives us an opportunity to ask some questions. And I had several good questions to ask of a couple of the departments. One of them's coming in to see me tomorrow to answer my questions. They were wanting 5 new positions and a lot more money for an area of permitting that is decreasing. And I don't get that. If your workload's decreasing, why would you need 5 more people and more money? So, anxious to see how creative their answer is.
Chris, one more question. Do you have any ability to, we got about 80 prisoners, state prisoners here in our jail we don't need. Can you get those transferred to the state prison? They're costing us too much money.
Are those, when you say they're state prisoners, that's something I've been trying to get my head.
Been trying to consider.
Been trying, okay. One of the things that I've been working on this year, because I've been hearing concerns about that here in Madison County, is the reimbursement rate. I want to make sure that we're being reimbursed what it actually costs to house those prisoners. And so Scott Sapicki, another colleague of mine from Maury County, is working on it. I know we're not. Well, when the department gives us their budget, they budget, I think it's just a little over $80 per prisoner per day to be in a state prison. But they're paying the counties anywhere from 30s, low 30s to 50s per inmate. 39 here. And other counties get different amounts. And so, we've got to have some equity there. I know it doesn't cost the county $79 or $80, but it costs more than 39. So that's what we're trying to get, is get that rate increased. I think it's only right that the state bear the complete cost for each one of those prisoners, and the county budget not be having to suffer for that.
One other point to go along with that, the state now will not take a prisoner from our jail to a state prison if they're convicted and sentenced to 2 years or less. So whatever they're going to serve right here. It's going to cost us $66. They're going to give us $39 a day.
You might want to flip over to that bonus that they've got, where they've got all that extra money. You might talk to them about that instead of all these give grants. How about those paid to jail?
We've got to do that. Yeah, we've got to make that equity. And that's something, I'm glad you mentioned that. I've heard comments and seen comments about the surplus that the state is seeing, the surplus revenue that we're seeing. And I want you to know where that comes from. Our governor, when he presents a budget, and then what we look at as a legislature, we try to be very conservative about those numbers. So they're based on projections. So there's a group of folks, a small group of folks that looks at the economy in the fall, and they come up with a number of what kind of growth or lack of growth the state may have in the next year. They come back sometime in January and look at it fresh again before they present to the governor a range of numbers. So they give him, they might say this year, pick somewhere in that range. Now, less conservative governors will pick the top end of that. They'll say, we're gonna go at 3.2%, let's spend all we can. But Governor Lee and the legislature this past year said, no, we're gonna pick something closer to the middle. And so that's what we based it on. Revenue has exceeded that. We're conservative. It has been we've collected toward the upper end of that. That's why we have lower collections. Several discussions about what to do with that money. Obviously, things like this, correcting this inequity with state prisoners and the reimbursement for counties. Another thing that I've been promoting is a tax holiday. The Department of Revenue can tell you almost to the penny. You say from June 1st to June 4th, we're going to do a sales tax holiday. How much is that going to cost? And so I'd like to see us offset this surplus with a sales tax holiday. That's the best way I know to get money back into your pockets. So something we're talking about, and I'm hoping that we can get some consensus on that this year. A lot of people think, well, we got the money, there's a lot of good things we can spend it on. And there are. There's a lot of, everybody needs something. But I think getting that money back in your pocket, to me, is the highest priority if we can. So.
Chris,
Yes,
with the sales tax holiday, would it be on everything or just like school supplies for kids, like it's usually?
well, I don't know. The devil's in the details. We'll have to work that out. I would say most everything. It's,
Because that's the only way it's gonna benefit everybody,
well,
everything.
exactly. And that's what our goal would be. They can tell us what that costs, and we know what one day costs, and we can figure out, okay, we're willing to try to do $100 million worth. That may be 2 days or 4 days or something. I don't know. So we're definitely gonna keep that in mind, and we're making it as universal as we can. Yes, sir.
Hey, I didn't realize there was a committee over the TWRA, so I have a couple of questions. I'm if I wasn't here today, I probably would have done nothing, because that's the season we're in. We've got a real problem with this chronic wasting disease, and also the invasive species, especially in fish. And both those issues the TWRA is working on, and that's what I keep hearing, working on. And I know that I've been reported that they put in some deer incinerator to deal with the carcasses of the CWD deer. I just wondered if somebody from the TWRA has actually notified you as a member of the committee what their plan is to get this taken care of, or they giving us a long face and saying, we don't know how to fix it. What's your take on both the invasive species and the CWD?
First of all, it's very positive. They have come before the Ag Committee. They've come before other committees to report what they're doing. We've had some other meetings that we've had different groups in to discuss both of those issues, the Asian carp issue and CWD. And quite frankly, TWRA has really stepped up on both of those. Now, the incinerator, I don't think TWRA actually was for it because it's not really the most efficient way to get rid of them. It's very costly, and you don't get rid of it. I mean, it takes a lot to burn up a carcass. So, but they're doing it because there was such a public outcry for it. The best way is to find a clay soil area, and there's plenty of state parks around here, and basically bury those carcasses in clay, seal them up in clay. That permanently eliminates those prions, which are the proteins that get in the environment and get in the deer by transmission primarily, but it'll seal them off forever. Landfill is a good way, but again, folks have kind of gotten upset about, oh, they're bringing all these carcasses, these contaminated carcasses to my landfill. It's literally the best place to put them, but public sentiment and public perception is a big deal. So they've gone with the incinerator. I don't know when it's going online. It may already be. I haven't heard. But they have been very proactive about this in promoting. I've seen billboards like you have. They've had public meetings. I went to one out of Spring Creek a couple months back, all over the affected areas, and you know, Madison County is one of the affected areas. Primarily just south and west of here, but Madison County is affected. On that issue there, they've really stepped it up. They're spending a lot of money on it that they would have normally spent on other things because it is such a prevalent issue. Same thing with Asian carp. They've really done a great job working with other agencies, Corps of Engineers, TVA, and others, and commercial fishermen to try to encourage commercial fishermen to harvest as many of these as possible. In Kentucky Lake alone, they have taken out like 5 million pounds of these fish in the last year or two. So it's a tremendous amount, and it's making a difference. I've heard positive reports this year from fishermen about the game fish and how much they're improving. Some of that's cyclical, but I do believe there's some of it that is definitely related to the Asian carp population being taken down some. And they just put in, and I went and witnessed part of the installation on this system up at where they have basically a barrier system they're putting in underwater. It uses sound, bubbles, and light to try to repel the fish from ever getting into the lock, which is how they step up to the next lake, the next river system. So they're testing it for 3 years. I'm wanting them to do things like that in multiple places, especially on the upper end of the Tennessee River before the fish get there. 3 years is too long to wait, so we're continuing to push on a federal level for more funding, because this is a federal issue, and also with state funding. TWRA is actually supplementing the fish market, so the people that buy the fish get a little bit of an incentive for buying Asian carp. The commercial fishermen get an incentive as well to harvest and sell them versus the buffalo and catfish and other things they're already working on. And they're buying nets for them because it's pretty rough on the nets the way they get these in. So they've been providing nets for the commercial fishermen. They've really stepped up their game, I will say, and we're watching them constantly, and I made it really clear to them when I first came into office that TWRA was working out of a hole with me, because I know facts from years ago that they ignored, thinking it wasn't going to be a problem, and now we've got a massive problem. And so I'm not saying they've done it because of me, but they know this is very important to me, and it will not rest. We've got to stay on top of it. Probably will never completely eliminate them from our water systems along the Mississippi and Tennessee, but if we reduce their numbers significantly and keep them down, they won't be a problem.
Question back here, Chris.
Chris, I know you've worked hard on school boards. There's school board members that have more of an impact on our economy than you do, than the mayor does. And at one time, didn't we have appointed school boards? Didn't we have one time where they appointed?
That's elected superintendent and appointed.
Yeah. Is there any talk around the campfire in Nashville? Is it possible to go back to the way it was once done? Instead of having some, I don't want to call any names, but somebody like Morris Merriweather having more of an impact.
I've not heard any comments about that. I haven't heard a discussion. That doesn't mean there might not be some taking place. Wednesday, I'll be meeting with most of our freshmen. As many of you know, I was elected as the assistant floor leader, which is kind of the freshman leader. And our former Representative Eldridge was in that position when he first came to the legislature. So it gives me a position in leadership, but it also helps me get a relationship with my freshman colleagues that I might not get otherwise. And I brought a lot of education opportunities to them so that we could all be up to speed on state government and what our role is and how the system works so that we can be the most effective for our districts. And we will be talking Wednesday. I've got a meeting with them on Wednesday about legislation that we're all working on, so we can share, because that really, I mean, you think it's an obvious thing, but it doesn't happen. I mean, unless you're just talking one-on-one with somebody, we don't have like a group meeting where the whole caucus sits down and says, well, I'm working on a piece of Second Amendment legislation that does this. Oh, well, I'm doing that too. Well, we'll combine forces. It just doesn't happen until things are filed, and then you start to see what's filed, and then you start getting together. But as far as the school board recall, of course, y'all know the challenges that have come to that. I'm looking at two things this year. One, running another school board recall bill, because I think it's the right thing to do. I think every citizen in this state ought to have the right to hold their school board, elected school board members accountable by that means. So I'm looking for a statewide bill, which is what we started out with last year, but at the last minute, when things got so rushed in, ended up having to amend that with Madison County only. Then the second thing I'm looking at doing, and I'll need help from the county commission, is looking at running just a local bill that would be only for Madison County. So if that one fails, then we've got something just for Madison County. So looking at maybe running two different things, and the local bill I don't even have to file till quite a ways down the road. But any help the commission can give me on that to say this is what we would like, then it helps the process.
Hey Chris, does the House still under the House rules, are we still limited to 15 bills per member?
Yes.
Where the Senate's unlimited because.
Yes. And that's a good point that Representative Eldridge raised. In the House, under our current rules, and this has been for several years, the House members are limited to filing 15 bills a year. So it helps keep the volume down. Some people I know historically filed things just to get their name out there, and they never ran them, but it's just cluttered up the books. So we're limited to 15. The Senate is not limited at all because you have to have a Senate sponsor for every bill in the House, and there's 1/3 of them as there are of us. So they each have to have, multiple, like say average 45 bills potentially. Some have more, some have less. I would say probably the majority of the work on each bill gets done in the House. It's not exclusive, but most of the time that's the case because again, the volume in the Senate is 3 times, if you look at per person, what it is in the House. So we have more hearings and more, more input, I guess, from you, and which I think is another reason we have to run every 2 years. Is we're closer to you. We have to stay in touch with our constituents, which I think is a good thing. So that is, I appreciate you mentioning that, but that is one of those functional things that you just need to know about.
Any relief on the franchise and excise tax for small business?
I don't know about the F&E tax for sure, but I know we're planning at least, and I'm anxious to see how extensive it'll be, repeal some more of the professional privilege taxes. I think it's wrong for the state to assert that it's a privilege to operate a business in the state of Tennessee. It's not a privilege, it's a right. So to tax those just for that privilege, I think is wrong in the title. And it was supposed to be a temporary tax when it was passed, under a Democratic governor. So we need to repeal those. We set aside an additional $15 million last year for this year's budget. So it will help go toward that, and I'm hoping to use some of the surplus for that. So those need to be eliminated. Now, I just don't own F&E yet. Haven't heard any
It's pretty stout too.
Yeah. I have had some CPAs come to me very concerned about cutting the privilege tax or cutting F&E and other things like that because it reduces the diversity of the taxation across the state. I think it's a legitimate concern, but I'm all for cutting taxes. I think, especially on businesses, because quite frankly, and I say this all the time in Nashville, businesses don't pay taxes. People pay taxes. Every single business is coming to you. It's a hidden tax to you every single time. So I'm always fighting against business taxes for that reason. Let's be upfront, on top of the table with what you're actually paying. Don't hide it, putting it in a product or something somewhere. I appreciate the chance to get to talk to y'all today and the interaction, and I want you to know I really envy your input. I covet your prayers. I appreciate many of you praying for me. It's definitely felt. This is a difficult job. I'm still excited about it and appreciate the opportunity to represent you and want to continue to do that. Running for re-election this year, as most of you know, and hopefully can do that without a challenger. But we'll see what happens. But do appreciate the help from so many in this room toward that effort, and want to stay in touch with you. I need to know what's on your minds at all times. So feel free to call, write, whatever it might be, and we'll stay in touch. So thank you again for letting me speak today.